Mike Naso here from the IPR Tropical Video Update page on YouTube with a lot to cover. Hurricane Maria is out there strengthening and headed for the Caribbean islands. You can see the satellite imagery of the Atlantic. We have watches and warnings out for the islands of the Caribbean and for areas of New England and the east coast of the United States from Hurricane Jose. We're going to talk about both these features. You can see in the Atlantic, there's Jose on the upper left hand of your screen here. Still a Category 1 hurricane, but it looks like it's winding down, pretty soon at least. And then we have another Category 1 hurricane, Maria, but that's winding up, and this is going to be a dangerous hurricane moving through the islands towards Puerto Rico and then eventually the Turks and Caicos and perhaps even the Bahamas. We're going to talk about these features, and we've got a lot to cover. Now here's the latest on Hurricane Maria. As of 5 p.m. Eastern Time, it was at 13.8 north, 57.5 west. Winds were 75 miles per hour. The Air Force was flying out there, confirmed it has an eye wall, an eye, and it is a hurricane, 982 millibars. The pressure is falling precipitously this afternoon. It's moving west-northwest at about 14 miles an hour, but that will slow, and we have a hurricane warning for the island of Guadeloupe, for the island of Dominica. We have a hurricane warning for St. Kitts, Nevis, and Montserrat, and we also have the tropical storm warnings for Martinique, Antigua and Barbuda, Saba, St. Eustatius, St. Lucia, and then a hurricane watch further north for the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, including areas like St. Martin and St. Barthélemy, which were hit so devastatingly by Hurricane Irma just a couple weeks ago. Now, the forecast track from the National Hurricane Center has Maria becoming a strong Category 3 hurricane, a major hurricane, after ripping through the islands as a strengthening storm, going directly over Puerto Rico on Wednesday, and then very close to the north coast of Hispaniola, and then entering the Turks and Caicos by Friday, still as a significant major hurricane. Again, it could be further north, it could be a little bit further to the south, but this is the projected path, and as of right now, the models seem in good agreement through the next 2 or 3 days that Maria will take a track very much through the islands towards Puerto Rico. This is a serious storm. Now you can see that, as I mentioned, in good agreement for the next couple of days, but then they diverge. Where will Maria go? Some of the models bring it out to sea. Some of the models take it very close to the southeast coast. In the short term, of course, the Caribbean islands, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, and the Turks and Caicos Islands are immediately in the path of this thing. And a lot is going to be dependent on what happens to Jose, which we're going to talk about as well. Now there's the beautiful visible satellite imagery from the preliminary non-operational out of NASA, but again, this is all going to become operational soon. You can see just a developing hurricane, the clouds there bursting right over the center. It does seem to still have some dry air and shear problems. It's a little flat there on its western side. However, strengthening is occurring, and it is expected to be in a more favorable environment as it moves through the islands, so this is going to strengthen, perhaps even rapidly. There's another view of it on the visible. Look at the end there. Notice right here as the sun sets, the growing thunderstorms right over the top. That's a building eye wall. So this hurricane is serious about her intensification, and it will be intensifying as it moves generally towards Dominica, Guadeloupe, maybe even Martinique, and areas of the Caribbean over the next couple of days. And it has a lot of real estate to work with. The water temperatures are very warm. There was, of course, some upwelling as Irma came up to the north, but again, Maria is going to touch untapped waters to the south of the islands in Puerto Rico, whereas Irma was to the north. So this is setting up very badly for intensification. Badly as in it is expected to intensify as it moves in through the northeastern Caribbean Sea. Now the waters get cooler off the northeast coast of the U.S., and that is where we find Hurricane Jose. Now Hurricane Jose as of 5 p.m. was at 31.5 north and 71.8 west. Winds were 90 with higher gusts. It's moving north at 9, so not very quickly, 967 millibars. But we now have a tropical storm watch from Fenwick Island to Sandy Hook, including Delaware Bay, southeast Rockaway Inlet to Plymouth, and that includes Block Island and Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. So we have watches and warnings for the Caribbean and for New England. This is how you know it's an active hurricane season, folks. You can see the forecast track from the National Hurricane Center takes Hurricane Jose almost due north through Tuesday, and then hooks it right and then loops it back around as a weakening system. But again, it could get close enough. Cape Cod, Nantucket, you guys could get buffeted by tropical storm conditions, which is why you're under the watch right now. Computer models want to loop it around, although some of them do push Jose out sooner rather than later, and this is all coming into play with Hurricane Maria, because what's going to happen is the longer Jose sits up here and loops around, the more an opportunity for a weakness in the ridging of high pressure, and that would allow Maria to eventually draw to the north. However, if Jose gets out of here fast, Maria could get stuck behind and jettison its way into the southeast coast of the U.S., or at least be a significant threat, and that would be bad news, of course. There's the visible satellite image of Hurricane Jose. The Air Force earlier was indicating this is a real lopsided storm. You can see it's kind of spinning here, getting a little bit shredded. It's not very favorable looking. It's pulsating, but it's not really strengthening. So right now we're just going to see it kind of transition to look less and less tropical as time wears on. Nevertheless, Jose has been a prolific Cape Verde hurricane. You can see it developed, of course, back on September 5th, and it became a very dangerous Category 4 hurricane, threatened the islands just days after Irma came through, and then it weakened, looped around, and now it's going to try and do that again, perhaps, before getting out, and it's racking up a lot of energy for a tropical cyclone. Now here's the GFS model, which takes Hurricane Maria right into the Turks and Caicos and then turns it north. The reason is you could see Hurricane Jose ends up getting trapped here with ridging to the north and loops back around again, and that allows Maria to slip further north. In contrast to that, the Canadian model, as of 12Z, takes Maria through the Bahamas, and then you can see Jose gets out of here fast enough for the ridging to rebuild north of Maria and sail her right into the southeast coast of the United States, South Carolina, I believe, on that run, which would, of course, be just a devastating blow to the Bahamas and the southeastern U.S. Now, that's the Canadian model. The European model, which has performed very well this hurricane season, takes Maria up and towards the area here between Bermuda and North Carolina because it has Hurricane Jose loop back around into Virginia. So there's some interaction here with the models in the long term, which is why Hurricane Maria needs to be watched no matter where you are from the Bahamas all up the eastern seaboard. Perhaps a little more disturbing was the H-Wurf model taking Hurricane Maria right over Guadeloupe as a Category 3 and then taking it over St. Thomas as a Category 4 hurricane in just a couple of days. That was, obviously, St. Thomas has been devastated by Irma. It does not need another strong hurricane. And so we're going to watch, even in the Northern Islands, you guys are under the watches, just in case we get kind of a stair-step track into the Northern Islands like that. That would be very, very bad. Hurricane Marilyn did a similar thing back in '95. That was a Cat 2, and it devastated a lot of islands that had just been hit by Luis, going back now 20-some years. But these storms happen, and when they do, it's bad news all around. We still have Lee out there as a tropical depression expected to move out and weaken. Not going to be a problem. It's way out at 13.2, 37.3. Lee is probably going to be one of the least significant tropical cyclones of the season. Hopefully I didn't jinx it to come back somehow, but you can see it's expected to remain out at sea. Finally, I want to note in the eastern Pacific we have Norma, which was a hurricane south of the Baja, expected to loop around and rain a lot. And we have Otis, which, believe it or not, this is the redeveloped system from what was once Hurricane Katia that hit Mexico weeks ago. The remnant circulation left Mexico, came into the Pacific. It's way out here, and it is strengthening. Norma should weaken, but still rain as it sits there south of the Baja with 50-mile-an-hour winds. You can see somewhat of an I-type feature. It's either a little stronger than it was, or it's getting a little stronger, but nevertheless ill-defined. And there's Otis, 105-mile-an-hour Cat 2, moving north at 4. It was a tropical storm, expected to become a Category 3 or 4 hurricane, and looking at that satellite image, Otis probably is one right now. So a very active Atlantic and Pacific tropics. We'll continue to watch Hurricane Maria, a strengthening hurricane headed for the islands.